Rahim. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina astafa amma ba'd. You're turning the lights off in the back, turn the lights off in the front, please. Right. Okay. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are going to continue with where we left off yesterday, but just a quick recap. We talked about Zakat being a pillar of our deen. Upon whom is it wajib? And when does it become wajib? What are the zakatable assets? These are the things that we covered. Which things are zakatable, which things are not zakatable. But now, inshallah, moving forward in our calculation, we have to also cover what are deductibles, things that are non-zakatable, that not only are not zakatable, when we can cancel it out from our zakat calculation. So, alhamdulillah, if a person has money, we talked about the fact that a person has cash, the cash is zakatable. If a person has stocks, the stocks are zakatable. Gold and jewelry is zakatable. Anything a person buys with the intention of selling is zakatable. And a person has a home, it's not zakatable. A person has appliances, they're not zakatable. A person has cars, they're not zakatable, whether for use or extra. So there are zakatable assets and non-zakatable assets. The new chapter that we're starting now is that when a person is calculating his zakat, when he adds up his zakatable assets, there are also some deductions that can be made. So if a person has, for example, $10,000 savings and one lunar year has passed from the due date, you'll have to give the zakat on that, which is 2.5%. 2.5% of the $10,000. We talked about the nisab, the gold nisab, silver nisab yesterday. Gold nisab around $6,000 and silver nisab around $500. So this 10,000 is more than the gold nisab. He will have to give 2.5% of the 10,000. However, if you owe somebody money, then this is a deductible. He can take that out. Meaning, the 10,000 minus 2,000, it'll be 8,000 remain left, 2.5% of the 8,000. So these are what we're talking about, deductibles. So in the past, in the classical fiqh books, they don't have this division of long-term debt and short-term debt. The reason they don't have this taqseem, this is a new thing, new meaning not just recent this year or something, but later day division, is because in the past, debt was something that everyone tried to avoid at all costs. No one wanted to be in debt. People hated debt or were afraid of debt just like death. So the only reason a person would take a debt is if they were in a life and death situation and they were compelled to do so. Not for luxury living or not for just furthering one's business or otherwise trying to live beyond one's means. So that is why when we look in the classical fiqh books, when they talk about duyun or debt, qard, they say that when a person has any savings, when he is calculating his zakat, he can deduct the entire debt amount, whatever he owes people. He will not have to pay zakat on it. Rather, he should be paying that back right away. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said, "Mathalul ghani dhulmun." A person who has money and he owes someone money and he delays in paying that back, this is a dhulm, this is a major sin. And those who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will keep them up at night. They will be afraid, what if I die with this debt? How will I face Allah ta'ala on the day of judgment? Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not perform the janazah of the person who had debt and did not pay it off. The shaheed, all of his sins are forgiven, illa dain, except for the debt he still owes fellow human being. Allah Ta'ala will forgive his rights, but the rights that we owe each other, He may take us to a task for that on the day of judgment. So, there are many ahadith as well that in which Rasulullah ﷺ has taught us to seek protection from debts. Now what happened is different changes occurred in the economy and in the way people behave in the finances and in people's temperaments and what's considered acceptable or not. People's perspectives on this have changed significantly, such that if a person, mashallah, may have like a very good income and has been saving, maybe he is a physician, he has been making 200,000, 300,000, and he has been saving it. Now he can go and buy a house for cash for $300,000, but he will find, based on the current society and understanding of the ma'ashara, that buying a $300,000 house cash, that's not going to be acceptable per my standard of life that it should be, and how will people look at me, and how will I be, what will the opinion of people be about me, that this is such a less expensive neighborhood or less expensive house. So if a person can afford to buy cash, he will still end up leveraging that through loans, whether the haram riba loans or the Islamic finance ones, and try to buy something beyond their means. So they'll buy a house that costs $2 million or $1 million, $900,000, when you can pay $200,000. Or is any businessman? I'm not just trying to pinpoint any particular education. It's a noble profession. Whether a businessman, anyone who has money, it doesn't matter if they're a doctor or a businessman or anyone who has money from any means, or they inherited it, maybe they didn't study anything, they just inherited a lot of money. They can also buy something, but they want to go. Everybody wants to what? Spend beyond their means. So everyone in America is in debt. So there's credit card debt, there's college debt, university debt, and then there's living beyond our means debt. So in that case, if we go with the original formula that you deduct all of your debts, people in America who have $20,000 in the bank, $30,000 in the bank, 50, 100 cash, not many people keep cash. Whatever comes in goes out, right? However much a person earns, he spends, and beyond what he earns, he ends up spending rather. So we don't have that much savings, and whatever savings we do have, if somebody is lucky enough to have liquid cash, which is zakatable, because the house is not zakatable, and the property is not, the furniture is not, all the expensive things he bought at home is not zakatable. It's just the cash and the gold and silver that is, and the stocks. If you take that together and we add everything, you'll say, oh, this person, mashallah, is $100,000. But then when we do the worksheet for zakat, we'll say, oh, I do have 100,000, but guess what? I'm at home, the mortgage is 600,000, 700,000. So 100,000 and minus 700,000 of the debts that I owe, so I'm negative 600. So if you look at it that way, everyone in America, when it comes to zakat, would be mustahiq of receiving, rather than farad on them to give. We would all be considered eligible recipients rather than liable to pay. So that is why the scholar said, wait, it's not going to work. The original formula doesn't work. Nowadays, the only thing that is keeping people awake at night or distressed about is their monthly payment. So that is why when it comes to long-term debt, only one monthly payment can be deducted. Like this particular month, what's your credit card bill, what's your payment for the house, etc. Any such debt which is structured to be repaid in installments. There was no concept of 30-year loans in the past. Now there's a 30-year loan. Therefore, it is not permissible to deduct the entire loan balance. What will happen if you start doing so? It's not going to be farad on anyone to pay zakat. On the other hand, if there is a short-term debt, meaning you're not borrowing from a bank or from a financial institution, rather from a friend, a cousin, relative, and you borrow this money because of some extreme financial hardship, some acute medical crisis, acute financial crisis, and that person who you borrowed the money from, he does not have huge reservoirs of cash. He actually needs the money back too. So in such a scenario, this is the original masla, short-term debt, that the total amount of the short-term liabilities can be deducted if they are due to be paid within that year. you're trying to pay it back as soon as possible. So this is the simple division of long-term and short-term debt. Additional liabilities that can be deducted are any utility bills that are yet to be settled. The debts were on the previous slide. That is a major discussion because that could potentially be thousands of dollars. These are within the hundreds, hopefully, not too much. But there could be some expenses for the month. When you're sitting down now to calculate your zakat, if you haven't done so for this month, a few days left in Ramadan. So on the 27th day, 28th day, when you're sitting down, you put all your money together. You don't have to sit down and make your own formula. We have the zakat calculator on our website. You can whatever utility bills you have for the month, you can minus that. If you have purchased any goods on credit, you owe the money for that on your different credit cards that you're going to pay this month. You can deduct that. If a person is going to pay his mahar this year, he can deduct that. If you have employees that you have to pay them wages, compensation. If you have any outstanding service charges, you can deduct that. And number 5 is what we already discussed when we talked about short-term and long-term debts, meaning any loans that are due for repayment within the year. You're planning to repay that loan, you can absolutely deduct that. Okay? So this is the discussion with respect to liabilities. What are the things that we can deduct? Now when it comes to retro zakat, giving for previous years. So zakat is followed annually and a person, if he makes tawbah and he wants to pay for the past years when he was in ghaflah and he was not paying, and he wants to return to, he is cognizant that I have to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I have to make up the past payments. So a person has to make tawbah when it comes to qada of salah, qada of sawm, qada of zakat. The tawbah is for delaying it, but the tawbah is not sufficient. A person still has to pay. So when it comes to fasting, all the days after bulugh, when we were adult and we were healthy and we did not fast, we have to make qada of those fasts. And if we did not perform salah, we have to make qada of those salah. And if we did not give zakat, we have to make qada of that zakat. If we did not go for hajj, there's no qada for it, that means it's still ada on us, we have to go for hajj. So zakat is in that same category. The reason we're mentioning this is because practically, how do we go back and calculate zakat for previous years? So the first time a person started earning money and he hit nisab, that is when his first lunar year will begin. If you cannot remember and we don't have everything, in our QuickBooks or accounting software, we don't know, we can try our best. La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. We try to recollect to the best of our ability. Fattaqullaha mastata'tum. To your best ability, you try to remember when did you start earning money and when did you reach nisab. And then after that, you calculate 2.5% of that amount and moving forward for every single year. Over here we see something that, it's okay, straightforward. Year 1441 Hijri, 2.5% of the $100,000, so it's $2,500, right? The main thing I want to highlight here is that if this is something which will be significant if we are paying zakat for many, many years at the same time back, retro, for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. This will have an impact that whatever amount was due in zakat and was not paid because you did not pay it, then that would not be included in the total assets that are zakatable per year. So look now, in 1442, a person, for example, still has $100,000 on his due date, just for the sake of the example. But he will not, his zakat in 1441 was $2,500. It's not going to be $2,500. It's going to be $2,437. His zakat is less this year. Why is it less? Even though on the due date he has 100,000. 1441 on the due date was 100,000. 1442 the due date is 100,000. 2.5 of that is 2,500. Over here is 2,437. Why is it less? It's because the entire $100,000 is not zakatable. That 2,500 that he was supposed to have paid the previous year and he did not pay, that can be subtracted. So the $100,000 savings on the due date of 1442 minus the 2,500 that he was supposed to have paid in the previous year equals 97,500. So you'll be giving 2.5% of the 97,500 only. So the zakat went down from 2,500 to 2,437. You will say, man, it's not a big deal. I can just add it. That's great if you can, and you can give more. Zain warjah, give more. But there are scenarios where people can't afford to give more. They have other expenses. And there are scenarios where this is not just 2 years. This could be 20 years. And then it'll really make a significant difference. So look at that. Now the next year, the zakat goes further down, 2,376. Why? Because it's this 97,500 the previous years minus another 2,437. So it's 2.5% of 95,062. And likewise, the next year, it's getting less. 2,500, 2,437, 2,376, 2,317. Right, so the purpose of this example was to illustrate as we go back in the years and we calculate the zakat for each year, then on the respective due date, those past amounts that were not paid can be deducted from the savings, respective savings on the respective due dates. Does that make sense? Right. Okay. So this is now you take now if a person is catching up for the previous years, he will add this 2,500, 2,437. This is what this is. 9,631 would be the total he's going to pay for the previous years. Now we come to we talked about who has to pay zakat, right? We covered that in detail yesterday, and then we covered what are zakatable wealth, and we covered what are the deductibles. Now we're going to come to the last part of the discussion before the Q&A is the beneficiaries. That who are the mustahiqeen? Who are those who are eligible to receive per the ayah in the Quran? This is the ayah Surah Tawbah, Surah 9, ayah 60. إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ, the poor. The poor, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ, who possess wealth but it's below the nisab. Anybody who has some money but is below a nisab is called fuqara. إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, those who have no wealth. وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا, the zakat collectors, meaning the zakat administrators employed by government following Islamic principles for the purpose of collecting zakat. The detail of this, there is a scope for misapplication here. That is why I'm identifying this one. The poor and needy are pretty obvious. There's really no explanation required. Number 3 is potentially confusing. And it's not only potentially, it is being misapplied. Therefore, it requires to be discussed. إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين. عاملين meaning if there is a Khilafah Islamiyah and there's an Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Amir al-Mu'mineen has different departments and it's a legitimate Islamic government, then one department of the Islamic government are those who are assigned by the Khalifa to be official zakat collectors. They are called wal-amilin, amilin of zakat. As Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the ruler, he was the imam, he was the Nabi as well as head of the government. And after him, the Khilafah Rashida of Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, etc., and Banu Umayyah, Banu Abbasiyah, as long as the Khulafa were there, they had a department of amilin who were appointed and assigned by the government to go and collect the zakat from the different provinces and regions. So there is also zakat on animals, so they go and they would count the animals. And there's zakat on the crops. We mentioned that, but we said we're not going to go into the detail of animals and crops. And they would, those are things that are visible. The gold and silver somebody keeps in his home, they're not going to go into it and open their chest and find out. But they would do it based on honor system when it comes to the gold and silver. And they would collect the zakat money and then they would take it back to the Khalifa, to the central government. and it would be deposited in the Bayt al-Mal, and then the government would distribute it to the needy. This was the whole system. Now these people who are working in that department, they would not get, it is haram for them as they're taking the zakat money to take any money, even as a gift, because that would fall under a bribe. Like Abdullah bin Rawaha radiyallahu ta'ala anhum was assigned by Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam to go and collect the kharaj and the tax from Khaybar, from the Yahud. And when he went there, the Jewish people of Khaybar, they called him on the side and they want to give him some gifts and some, feast, invitation, and some type of, they wanted to basically bribe him. So, that you do not take extra from us or do not do dhulm on us. That is what they stated. So Abdullah bin Rawaha radiyallahu anhu said that if it wasn't the fact that I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I would have taken extra from, because there's no one in the world that I love more than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I'm taking the money back to him. And there's no one in the world I hate more than you. So both ways I would be motivated. Sometimes people are unjust because they love someone. Sometimes people are unjust because they hate someone. And Allah Ta'ala addresses both in the Quran. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kunu qawamina lillahi shuhada'a bil qist, and bil qisti shuhada'a lillah. When Allah Ta'ala says, make sure you are just. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ. The fact that you hate someone should not compel you to be unjust with them. In the other ayah, وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوْ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. The fact that you love your parents and you love your relatives should not make you be unjust in their favor. So don't be unjust in the favor of your loved ones, and don't be unjust against those who you hate. In both scenarios, make sure you are always just. So he said, there's no one I hate more than you, and there's no one I love more than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I have not one reason, but both sides I have reason to actually take from you more than what I'm supposed to. However, I fear Allah, so I don't need this money. So, but they were now employees of the Khilafah, right? So they would not be getting money from the people they're going to collect from, but their salaries would be covered by the government. And that fund which was set aside to give the salaries of the zakat collectors was funded by zakat money. So the zakat money, one of the expenditures of zakat money was for this department. And the zakat collectors would get their salaries irrespective of how much they collect, more or less, on a monthly basis. It is not like, okay, you're doing a great job, you're getting a commission, you collect a lot of zakat, so you get more money. So there's no incentive for them to cheat. I just want to clarify that. And the reason this is important is they were on behalf of the Khalifa. Nowadays, when we are giving zakat to different organizations, if there are people working in those organizations, they're disbursing the zakat. They are the wakil or the representative of the one who's giving the money. So just like you give your friend, you give your cousin in back home in some country, or wherever, here or there, anywhere else, it doesn't make a difference, but I'm just giving an example. And you said then in the neighborhood there are poor people, give the zakat money to them. So he is your representative, he's distributing the zakat money on your behalf. So is it permissible for him to pocket it and say that, hey, you sent by Remitly, Western Union or whatever, you bank wired me $5,000 of zakat, so I'm going to distribute the 3,000 to the faqir and miskin. The poor person, let's give the faqir 1,000. The miskin, number 2, miskin untha matraba, who has nothing, let's give him 1,000. And I'm the zakat collector, I'll take the remaining, 8,000. Right? Because the Quranic ayat says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْعَامِلِينَ. No. Right? Because he is the wakil, representative of the one who is giving. So he has to just hand it over 100%. He cannot take some of the zakat money for himself. So what happens with many aid organizations is that they have overhead. Some of them are very proud of the fact and very open about it that we are not as bad as the others, and we actually limit our overhead to 10%, right? For example. So when it comes to their operating cost, their buildings, their marketing, their the people who are working there, their salaries, all of that, we limit it to 10%. So 90% actually goes to the eligible recipients. They may be doing phenomenal work, so that's great. What we need to do if you donate to such an organization is that you give 110% of your zakat. When you calculate it, make sure that you add 10% to it, so that 100% of what you're giving goes to the eligible recipients, and 10% is a donation to that relief organization. It's a sadaqah. So that is the discussion on the zakat collectors. وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ is the next in the ayah. Those whose hearts are to be reconciled. These were new Muslims that needed support or reconciliation to prevent harm. If they were poor or needy, they're already included above. The reason they're mentioned separately was that initially when the Muslim Ummah was very weak in the beginning stages, then Rasulullah ﷺ did give zakat money to such new Muslims who were not poor, to strengthen their hearts, to reconcile with them. These were diehard mushrikun of Makkah who had been fighting their entire lives against Islam. After the Fath Makkah and the battles of Hunayn, Nabi ﷺ gave them goats and sheep and camels to soften their hearts. However, this became abrogated. This is mansukh. And this is the ijma of the Muhajirun and Ansar. Right in the time after Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the era of Sahaba. Umar radiallahu anhu said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this ummah strong, that zakat money will only be given to poor and needy, will not be given to, poor and needy, including new Muslims, absolutely. New Muslims that are poor and needy for sure. But rich new Muslim who has money, to give him zakat money to soften his heart, this has been abrogated as well. Then للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب, to free slaves. Since slavery doesn't exist anymore, this will not apply as well. This next one, وفي الرقاب والغارمين, is very much applicable. Those that are ridden with debts, burdened by insurmountable debts, and possessing no additional assets to relieve their financial obligations. So this is that person who has money, and the money may be more than the nisab as well. So the nisab is 6,000, so the person may have $7,000 or $8,000 or $10,000, but they have debts, not long-term debts, but the short-term debts that are due in totality. The entire debt is due. It's on their head. So they have to pay back their brother, they have to pay back their sister, they have to pay back their in-laws or whoever. Even though they may have money, they owe more money than they have. So this is wal gharim. When we are trying to figure out if someone is eligible to receive, that cousin, that person, if you know that you don't know how much gold they have and how much money they have, I'm trying to figure out if they truly are below the threshold, above the threshold. If you know for the fact that they have debts, then what happens? Then you can close your eyes and go forward and give them zakat money, know that they are definitely an eligible recipient because they are maqroos, they are in debt. Like this is a very common issue where people say that somebody in their family wants to get married in Pakistan or India or different places. So you want to give zakat money to somebody for shadi, right? Now the thing is, there are broader issues here about why our marriage is so expensive and why we have made it so financially crippling to get married. We can, that's another discussion for another time. Marriage should not be so expensive, and you have to make it easier for one another. However, keeping that discussion on the side, if the particular goal here is that you want to help them out, and you want to help them out with zakat money, but they may have some gold, they may have some silver, they may have some cash that is just above the threshold. However, they have this big, huge wedding looming. How are they going to do it? And you want to help them. So there are different ways you can, like a hila sharia, different ways you can help them out. One of them is that if there's any particular member of that family that does not have savings, and you trust that individual that they will help in the cause of the wedding, you can give it to them. Meaning, for example, the father of the bride The mother of the bride has gold, you can't give her. The father of the bride has savings, you can't give him. Maybe you give the money with the intention directly to the bride to be, right? What if she already has some gold given to her, she doesn't qualify? Then if she has a brother or a sister, key thing is who's baligh, who's an adult, meaning they have adult means shar'an adult, not culturally adult. Shar'an adult is after, for a girl at the age of 10 or 11, as soon as she becomes baligh, as soon as she hits puberty. For a boy, 12, 13, 14, maybe even 12 for a boy, depending, right, when he becomes mature. So at that time, if they're less than that, if they're less than baligh, then they are dependent of their father and mother, shar'an. So therefore, if the father and mother have a nisab, you cannot give zakat to the minor. But if they are 12, 13, 14, they don't have money in their name, then they are an eligible recipient. They're considered as an independent per the Sharia. So if you give the zakat to them, and you say that you can help to pay for the wedding in your family, right? That's one way. Another way that I just remembered, the reason I remember this whole thing, the word debt, is if you tell them that you make the arrangements of the hall and of the catering and all of the expenses and sign those contracts and now you own that money. How much money do you owe? More than your savings. Once you start owing more than your savings, then what happened? You became debt-ridden. So then now I'm going to pay you to pay off your debt. So it becomes jais. Then you can pay with zakat money to the individual because now they owe more money than they have. It's just how you approach the situation. Before they agreed to the catering and to the clothes and to the whatever, the jewelry and the hall and all the expenses, right now they're not zakat eligible. So if you give them zakat money now, your zakat is not is not discharged. But after they make those agreements, written and verbal, and enter those contracts, now they owe more money than they have. So now all of a sudden they're zakat eligible. You understand my point? So then they can become debt-ridden. So if somebody says that, what's the point of the whole thing? You know, what's the point of all the exercise? That's exactly what Allah wants you to see. That are you doing it properly or not? Because if somebody says, what's the point of a whole nikah? You know, zina is also an option. So Allah Ta'ala wants you to do it in the proper way, it's nikah, and the improper way, it's zina. Proper way, it's zabiha, it's chicken. If it's 100% zabiha halal, or if it's machine slaughtered, it's going to be chicken, right? So what's the difference? One is the proper way, one is the improper way. That's the difference. That's what Allah Ta'ala wants to see. So at the end of the day, it may seem the same thing, but it's the process that makes one halal and one haram. Then we're moving forward. Right, this periodically gets stuck. Okay, so we have إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين. The next one is وفي سبيل الله. Okay. في سبيل الله is in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was regarding the mujahidun fi sabilillah. They would be given money from zakat. Then you have وابن السبيل, the traveler. The traveler, this is in the past. If there's somebody who's rich at home, he has a lot of assets, but he is far away from his home, he's traveling in a foreign land, and he loses his money. So technically he's not poor because he has money at home. But there was no system of credit cards, debit cards, banking system, bank wires, quick pay, Zelle, all of these things. Western Union, he cannot get money from home. So you can give this traveler who has fallen into destitution during their journey, despite potentially having wealth in their homeland. These are the people mentioned in the ayah. So these are the categories. So which one still applies? We talked about mu'allafatul qulub, slaves, and all those other things that don't apply. At the end of the day, what applies? Basically, people who do not have nisab, or they have money less than the nisab, or they are in debt. That's what it boils down to. So somebody may be quote-unquote poor, but they have the nisab. As soon as they end up having a nisab, you cannot give them zakat. That is an objective way to determine who's eligible or not. It's very, very important. If you think, they're really poor, they're hand to mouth, whatever they earn, they spend. Yeah, but if they still have the nisab, you cannot give them zakat. And it's very, very important. And it's our responsibility when we're giving it to the person to ensure they are not in possession of nisab. So like over here, when we're giving this zakat to anyone, we have a whole form where they have to sign that this is the nisab, this is the value of the nisab, and I swear that I do not have this much in savings. Right? If they fill out the form, then it qualifies them. They are a qualified eligible recipient. There are some people, we talked about who you can give zakat to, they are eligible, and now we are going to talk about those that you cannot give zakat to. So when it comes to relatives, we cannot give to simply everyone on top and everyone beneath and directly across. So who are on top, meaning father and mother, and paternal and maternal grandfather, grandmother, and up. So meaning dada, dadi, nana, nani, any relative straight up, paternal, maternal, grandparents. And then likewise straight down, means son and daughter, grandson, granddaughter, pota, poti, nawasa, nawasi, any grandchildren down and further, great, great grandchildren, as may go down. We cannot give them zakat money, and to one's spouse. We cannot give zakat money to one's spouse. Right? So when it comes to relatives, it's only these three relatives. So other relatives that are not these three, we can give zakat to. And that means, what are the closer relatives that are not listed here? Sibling is number one. So it is permissible to give zakat to one's brother. It is permissible to give zakat to one's sister. If it is permissible to give zakat to your own sibling, then obviously it is permissible to give zakat to your parent sibling. And your parent sibling would be your uncle and aunt. And if you can give zakat to your uncle and aunt, then you can give zakat to your uncle and aunt's children, meaning your cousins. If you can give zakat to your own sibling, why can't you give zakat to your cousin? Obviously, you can. So you can give zakat to your siblings, you can give zakat to your uncles, you can give zakat to your cousins. There are two things that when we talk about these relatives. Number one, is it okay? Is it a good thing to do? Yeah, absolutely. It's in fact double the reward. Because you will get the reward of discharging the zakat, and you will get the reward of being considered for family members. Silatul Rahim, Sila Rahmi. Second thing is the FAQ, whenever you talk about this, is that do I have to inform them? You do not have to inform them, but you have to have the niyyah. Meaning, if you gave them money, you gave them a gift, and then afterward you learned this masala, you said, oh, I never knew that. Can I backdate that and make that zakat? No. Because when you gave it to them, you gave it as a gift. If you have the niyyah at the time of giving the zakat, then the zakat will be discharged. And how do you present it? You can just say that this is a gift because of the happy occasion in the family or whatever. So you just send them a gift. This is a gift for you. And when you're sending a gift, by the way, you say, no, it's kind of awkward because if I give them cash, then we never covered this. All of these things come to mind as we were discussing. There's no ruling that zakat has to be given in cash. Who said that? It can be given in kind. So you can, if you buy jewelry, you bought a necklace. SubhanAllah, what happened now? So many things at play. So somebody is buying for a cousin. I hope the sister is rich. It can be for a sister or sibling, but for a cousin who is needy and mustahiq of zakat, they are now giving it as a gift, and they're giving a golden necklace or earring or ring as a gift, and they make the niyyah of zakat. So all of these masail are at play now. Now you found out you can give to cousin, yes. You found out they're mustahiq, yes. You found out you made the niyyah of silatul rahim, you're getting that thawab, and you also are implementing the masala of you don't have to give it in the form of cash, you can give it in the form of any other kind, anything else. And you also learn the masala that you don't have to tell them it's zakat. So there's no way in the world they're going to think it's a zakat because they probably never came across this masala themselves, unfortunately. So they just received a ring and your zakat got discharged in such a beautiful manner. Okay. We were speaking about mahar a little while ago, and sometimes we make things obligatory upon ourselves that are not obligatory, and then that which is obligatory, then we start making excuses like, oh my God, it's too much. So when you talk about mahar, sometimes the people say that, oh, this is so expensive, I don't want to do this. But I tell them, what are you doing in the nikah? So It's not that I'm even going to address the fact that you need to cut down all the other unnecessary expenses, but even from the perspective of just that category of what you are already buying and giving to your wife, are you giving I'm giving this gold and I'm giving this clothes and everything. On top of that, I have to give mahar. Who said on top of that? Does the mahar have to be cash? No, right? Same concept. So you can make the niyyah that the gold and the clothes and everything you're giving is part of the mahar. It doesn't have to be a separate cash payment, right? Same thing over here. Other people that zakat we cannot give to are true, actual descendants of the Banu Hashim. Hashim bin Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is bin Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib bin Hashim. It's the family of Hashim. The descendants of Ali, Abbas, Ja'far, Aqil, and Harith bin Abdul Muttalib. Right? So why we cannot give them zakat? Does it mean we don't care about the family of Rasulullah? No. There's another thing at play here, and that is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam he declared that zakat is haram for me and zakat is haram for my progeny ila yawm al-qiyamah. For once and for all, any objection that your purpose of establishing prophethood was to create a financial empire for your children or a political empire for your children, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to destroy that doubt that anybody could cast. First of all, his male children, Allah ta'ala decreed that they would all die in childhood. Abdullah, Tayyib, Tahir, Qasim, Ibrahim, these were sons of Rasulullah, they died. There's such a big split in the ummah and division and fights from that with respect to just his son-in-law, Ali radiallahu anhu. Imagine if his sons were there, what the ummah would have done. Is he the most eligible one to succeed him or not? Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman, did they take away the right of Ali radiallahu anhu? He wasn't the descendant of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly. He was his son-in-law. He was the father of his grandsons, Hassan and Hussein. Still so many battles took place. مَا كَانَ مُحَمَّدٌ أَبَا أَحَدٍ مِنْ رِجَالِكُمْ. So likewise, when it comes to finances, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is a hadith where there was a pile of dates in the masjid of zakat, and the little baby Hassan, he was hungry, starving. He went and he took a date and was eating it. It was in his mouth. He was chewing on it. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam opened his mouth and took out the date and threw it. He said, "Ya bunayya, oh my dear son, Allah has made this haram upon me and you and all of us." Subhanallah. Other people who claim to be prophets, like Musaylamat al-Kadhab, he wrote a letter to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Jibreel alayhi salam came to me and he brought revelation to me and he said, "I'm a prophet as well." And he told me that half the dunya belongs to you and half to me. Right? So the purpose of claiming prophethood is very, very obvious. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wrote a letter back, "Min Muhammad Abdullah Rasuli ila Musaylam al-Kadhab." This is a letter from Muhammad, the true slave and messenger of Allah, to Musaylama, the liar. And he sent an army, right? So Musaylam al-Kadhab. So this is our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How do we support the Banu Hashim? Through sadaqah, through nafal sadaqah. Allah has made it permissible. This is one of the signs of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, nubuwah of Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu. He knew about it. He had learned from his Jewish masters. That's why when he came to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina, the first day, what did he say? "I brought some dates. This is a gift." So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ate some and shared with his companions. Second day he came and he brought some dates and said, "Ya Nabi Allah, Ya Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is zakat." Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Jazakallah," and he distributed to the needy. He was watching him. He didn't take a single bite. Then the third day he came, and then he was walking around here and there on his back side, like circling around from the back. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Oh, Ya Salman, how many tests are you going to do?" He said, "What?" He said, "You're looking to see the Khatamun Nubuwah, the seal of prophethood between my shoulder blades and my back." Okay. He lowered his shirt and he saw it. So Salman Farsi came in, hugged him and kissed him. Very long hugging kiss. Because how long was he looking? For almost 100 years, right? Decades and decades and decades. As a young boy, he met the Christian monk and he joined him and he served him for years, and then he told him, "Go to the second one," served him for years. I don't know anyone who follows Tawheed except for one all the way there. Then he went third one for another 20 years. Then he went to third one, fourth one. Then he was captured as a slave and he was brought to Medina. He was working with the Jewish master and he was on top of the palm tree of his master, working on removing the dates and putting them in the basket, when he heard his Jewish master was there, and another Jewish neighbor came and said, that man that claims to be Muhammad has arrived in Quba, and all the Ansar of girls are singing Tala'al Badru Alina to welcome him. So he was on top, he came down. He said, I've been looking for this man for a century. He's here. What did his master do? Beat him and said, it's none of your business. Go back to your work. Why are you even eavesdropping on us? This matter does not pertain to you. Go back to your job. But then in that evening, he collected some dates from his manual labor, and he went and presented as sadaqah, as hadiyah. Next day, zakat, and third day, he accepted Islam. Allahu Akbar. Number 5, zakat is not given to a non-Muslim. Before we think it's unfair, we also have to recall that zakat is not obligated on non-Muslims. So non-Muslims, they do not pay zakat, nor the non-Muslims receive zakat. They can be helped through sadaqah. In fact, if there's a hungry non-Muslim, it is not only rewarding, it's the most rewarding act to feed a hungry person. Because Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, أفضل صدقة, the most rewarding sadaqah, and tushbi'a kabidan ja'i'an, is to feed a hungry stomach. He didn't say a Muslim stomach. Or whoever is a hungry stomach, you can feed them through hadiyah, through sadaqah, not through zakat and sadaqatul fitr. There are many organizations that are taking sadaqatul fitr money and giving it to non-Muslim homeless people. In Chicagoland, right here. They have, I talked to them, I went and explained. It's not like, oh, why are you just telling us? Why don't you talk to them? I did. I went and explained to them, but they were not accepting and said, no, this is the problem with the ulama of the ummah or whatever, all that kind of stuff. So the thing is, they are actively collecting. There's not some fraud or deception. It's very clear that we use this money to give it to homeless people. But we should help homeless people through what? Sadaqah, nafila, not farad. These people that are that we can collect zakat money, that are eligible recipients, and those that are haram, is not only for zakat, it's for all sadaqat wajiba. Sadaqah wajiba means something is farad on you, either from Allah Ta'ala, like the zakat, or the sadaqatul fitr, or any kafara, any fidya, for somebody, for example, is terminally ill and they're not able to fast in Ramadan. So there's one sadaqatul amount per day. So if it's $10, it would be $300, right? That $300, you cannot give it to a non-Muslim or someone who has an nisab. Or if you made a vow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or any of those kafarat, a person took an oath and broke his oath and has to feed. So there's a whole category of wajib sadaqat, and all of these restrictions apply to the entire category of wajib sadaqat. The nafal sadaqah, what are the limitations on nafal sadaqah? 0. Can you give it to Banu Hashim? Yes, in fact you're supposed. Can you give it to a non-Muslim? Absolutely. Can you give it to parents, children, spouse? Yes. Do you have to ensure that person doesn't have a nisab? No. What is nafal sadaqah? Nafal sadaqah is basically any money that is given to anyone with the intention to please Allah. From our perspective, we have this whole lillah concept in sadaqah and hadiyah. There's really no division. Technically, if you if you say that, if you're eating iftar in the masjid, right? The iftar in the masjid. So people are sponsoring that. They're sponsoring it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So don't go and say this, but I'm just saying, if somebody sponsors it and he says, why am I paying this? Is it zakat money? No, it's for the sake of Allah ta'ala. So it is just to please Allah ta'ala. What do you call money that is given to please Allah? Sadaqah. But in our culture, in Urdu in particular, if he says, sadaqah kamal khare, right? So that is a very negative connotation. How can you eat sadaqah money? Allah, it's a toheen, it's something that is what? Degrading. How dare you allege that I'm eating sadaqah? So sadaqah is taken as something, sadaqah, the word sadaqah is used for zakat. Or sadaqah is a very broad word. Anything given to please Allah. Sadaqah can be divided in 2 categories, wajibah and nafila. That which is wajib and that which is nafil. That which is wajib, all the restrictions apply there. That which is nafil, there is no restriction there. And you don't want to create fights and you don't want to create confusion. And when people are like right now calmly sitting and listening, understanding, that's fine. Otherwise, if you, in the flow of it, if you say, oh, this is, this fruit chaat is from sadaqah. The Ruh Afza is from zakat. so then, oh God, then you know what to eat, what not to drink. Allah. Okay, anyway, so there is, when it comes to non-Muslims, we need to support them with sadaqah. A wealthy person, if you want to help them out, you can give them sadaqah. Why would you want to help a wealthy person? For example, tuition. You want to help our Muslim youth. They have nisab, but you want to help them. You can give them a charity. You want to call it sadaqah. If that's a bad word per your connotation in your culture, fine, call it something else. But in reality, it's going to be sadaqah. Any general welfare projects, hospitals, madrasas, through sadaqah. Parking lot expansion, sadaqah, right? Masjid construction, sadaqah. Yeah, right. This one, I wouldn't call it sadaqah. If somebody actually worked and you're giving them their wages, this was actually, by the way, not a list of sadaqah. This is a list of people who cannot get zakat. So if you find somebody who's absolutely needy, he's a faqir and a miskin, and you say that do this labor, build this wall, and after he does the work, then you want to give him the zakat as wages. Can you do that? No, you cannot. Prisoners, it's a responsibility of the government to provide for them, right? So it's like if you're giving zakat money to the prisoners, then it's like you're donating to the government. And the government is not mustahiq of zakat. A person who does not have the nisab of zakat but has goods beyond their essential needs which reach the value of nisab. This is what we talked about yesterday. The person who, when it comes to, do you have nisab? No. Cash, he only has $500 cash. So does he have to pay zakat? No. But can he receive zakat? We have to look at his non-zakatable assets. If his non-zakatable assets, he has a vacation home, he has multiple cars, he has yachts, he has artwork, he has jewelry. They're all non-zakatable assets, but they're a lot beyond his needs. What will we tell him? Liquidate those additional assets to take care of your needs. You cannot receive zakat money. We talked about this number 11 in detail yesterday. Now, we're concluding last slides, paying zakat. It is important to pay zakat without delay because it's followed every year. It's wajib al-fawr. And we should make a clear intention while giving it to an eligible recipient or their representative, or while separating zakat funds from personal assets. So the niyyah is important. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. While giving it, it's simple. When you're giving it, you make the niyyah. Or when you give it to their representative, meaning if there's a representative on behalf of the poor individuals, when it is given to the representative, the niyyah has to be made there, whether they make the niyyah later on or not. Or while separating zakat funds, meaning if you take all this, you calculate your zakat and you put it into a bag, put it into a bucket, at that time you make the niyyah. And then your child, your wife, your employee, or whoever in your store, they're giving the money out to the needy people, who are the beggars, for example, back home, at that time, they don't know it's zakat, they don't make the niyyah zakat. Is that okay? Absolutely. Why? Because the niyyah was done at the time when it was separated. That's what is being highlighted by the last part of that sentence. And then one may use their own wealth to pay the zakat of their spouse or adult children, provided they have their permission and acknowledgement. I talked about this. If when does a child become baligh? Become shar'an an adult at the age potentially of 13. So if you have money in their name, then when you are discharging zakat on behalf of your baligh children, you have to have their permission. You should say that there's some money you have set aside for your college, for your wedding, or for whatever. It's in your name, it's your money. I'm going to discharge the zakat. Do you give me permission? And they would, I'm assuming. And likewise, if you're giving zakat on behalf of your spouse, husband on behalf of the wife, wife on behalf of husband, whatever the case may be, then you have to take their niyyah into account. To ensure the validity of zakat, the recipient must have complete ownership and unrestricted control. So you cannot give the zakat money and put stipulations. Whatever money you're giving them, they should have unrestricted control over it. This is called tamlik. Mallaka yumalliku tamlik, to assign ownership, to make them malik. So the one who is giving the money, the transfer, he must be the zakat payer, the one who's giving the zakat, or your friend and cousin representative who is discharging it on your behalf, or the Islamic organization who is disbursing it on your behalf. And the one who is receiving it must be a living person. Living person means that you cannot give zakat for burial expenses. You can give zakat for burial expenses in a particular way, fashion. How so? Meaning, if the burden of the burial, financial burden, is upon the heir, the warith, the son, because the person who died doesn't have money, then you can give the zakat money to that son. That take this money because you don't have money, you're deserving, and to take care of the funeral of your father. The only thing we're trying to identify here is that you cannot give the zakat money to the estate of the deceased person because the man who died was poor. Because that estate is not a zakat eligible recipient for the simple reason it's not a living person. But the son is a living person, give it to the son. It's just, again, matter of procedure. Must be an eligible living person or their authorized representative. And the transfer cannot be payment for services, right? We covered that. And the recipient must take unconditional possession and ownership of the funds. So it's not in payment for any service. So now we have a few scenarios we'll go over, and each scenario is unique because there's a particular qaida in usul and principle that is being highlighted. So say Zayd has $999 in his bank. He has a house worth $300,000 and a car worth $30,000. So is he liable to pay zakat? So in this scenario, we're assuming the nisab is $1,000. Okay? So $999 in his bank. Does he have the nisab? The nisab is $1,000. He's $1 less than the nisab. He does not have the nisab. But his house is worth $300,000. That's one house. So he is allowed to have his house. That's not going to be part of the calculation. That's a durura. He has one car. That's his durura, is his need. So since he has only $999 and is less than nisab, does he have to pay zakat? No, because that's the whole concept of nisab. Once you own nisab, you're in possession of nisab, only then you have to give zakat. He's not in possession of nisab. So he does not have to pay zakat. Is he eligible to receive zakat? This is where the subjective part comes that, what about the value of his house is so much? Depending on the market, depending on the time, a person is allowed to, the fact that zakat is, this house is not going to be calculated in his zakatable assets for sure. Why? Because the house is not zakatable, period. The question is, it's non-zakatable, but then the non-zakatable assets were necessary and unnecessary. Where does this house fall? So if one house is necessary, then if somebody wants to go really say, well, do you need such a house? Can't you live in a smaller house? You really want to push it? It does become subjective. That's why I mentioned yesterday that this is the subjective part. But alhamdulillah, since there's only one house, I would say it should be safe to say this person is eligible to receive by $1, right? When we are, another thing, since this person, after you give him $1, he's over the nisab, does that mean you can only give him $1 of zakat? No, you can give him at one shot. If you give him $1,000, $2,000, it would be jais. But if you break it up in installments, you give him $1,000, and then you want to give him second 1,000. Can you give him second 1,000? No. That's another interesting masala. If you give 2,000, that's fine, it's all discharged. If you give him 1,000 followed by 1,000, the first 1,000 is discharged, the second 1,000 is not. Because after he got the first 1,000, he is not an eligible recipient anymore. And as I was mentioning, not to maybe the whole crowd, but those who came afterward in the Q&A that continued, is that there's two separate discussions and we should not confuse the two. One is technically what's discharged, zakat is discharged or not, is it valid or not? The second one is a whole different discussion. Is this person the most eligible person, meaning is it most recommended to give this person? Is this the most recommended expenditure of zakat or not? That's a different discussion. The two different discussions, right? So Amr has $500 in his bank, okay, and a house worth $500,000, and 2 vacation properties, each worth $100,000. That's a nice one in the picture, right? Is he liable to pay zakat? If yes, how much? If no, is he eligible to receive? Remember, I told you every scenario is pointing towards a different masala. What do we see in this scenario? The fact he has 500, does he have the nisab? No. So it seems like, oh, he doesn't have nisab, maybe he can receive. House worth 500,000, it's okay. If that's the house he's living in, maybe we can not count that. But then as soon as we say he has 2 vacation properties that are 100,000 each, that becomes a problem now. Problem with respect to eligibility of receiving. Is he mustahiq of receiving now? No. Does he have to pay? No. He doesn't have to pay right now. He only has $500. But what's going to happen is he's going to say, I only have $500, my family's starving. We're going to say that, no, you have to sell the vacation home. Once he sells the vacation home and liquidates it and he ends up having more than $500 at that point zakat may be wajib upon him if a year passes on his due date. Okay? Scenario 3, Maryam has $700 in the bank, right, which is less than the nisab. She has a house worth $300,000. Is that going to come in the account? No. One rental property worth $100,000. So the rental property we covered yesterday is that the rent that you receive is zakatable. The value of the rental property is not zakatable. So there's no zakat on the 100, not on the rental property. We covered the masala, but this is the scenario. She has a total of $400 in rental income. Is this zakatable? Yes. In addition to her bank balance, because she didn't deposit it yet, I guess. How much zakat will she pay? So she has 700 that by itself was not zakatable, but this other 400 is there. 700 plus 400, 1100. So now she has crossed the threshold of the nisab of 1,000. So the zakat of 2.5% on the 1100, and that's it. Yeah, so that is by default we are going to be deducting, right? On the due date, you will deduct all any expenses that are due that month, which we covered in the already. Yeah. Yeah, so whatever taxes are due, because the thing is, people always say, oh, I have these taxes and I have these repairs. So what happened is that you already paid the taxes. So it's already deducted from your savings. And whatever repairs you already paid for, it's already deducted because you paid for it. It's not there in your account anymore. Because remember, zakat is on savings, not on income. So we have this mindset of income tax. So you say, oh, I have these taxes, and so you can deduct that from income. It makes sense, even if it's past. But it doesn't make sense at all when it comes to savings. So if you had paid for repair during the year on your investment property, and you had paid all these bills, now you're remembering them. Yeah, but it's already deducted. How is it deducted? Because it's not in your saving. You already paid it. Didn't you pay it? So it's gone. So you are going to deduct it again. It makes sense when you're deducting from income, but it doesn't make sense when you're deducting from savings. Unless there's some bill that is this month. Like you have this month a property tax due, which is going to be the case now with April 15th, right? Or income tax, right? So you have your income tax due, you didn't pay it. You're like one of those last minute people coming to the parking lot. Last minute paying your taxes, right? So if you owe that, that's significant. If you have your savings and you have so much tax to pay, you can deduct that because you're going to pay it now. But I already paid so much. Yeah, you paid it, that's gone. So why you want to deduct it again, okay? Scenario 4, Fatima has $600 in the bank. That is less than the nisab. She has a house worth $300,000. The house worth $300,000, that's not zakatable, right? She has one resale property worth $100,000. What about the resale property? Is that zakatable? Yeah, exactly. Anything bought with the intention of resale is zakatable. So she will have to pay zakat on that $100,000. And one property for rent worth $200,000. The property for rent, is it zakatable? No. So she has to pay 2.5% of how much? 100,600. Wait. So you'll say 100,060. Yeah, so $600 and the $100,000. 2.5% of that, exactly. So we are going to not consider the $300,000, not consider the $200,000. Got it? Okay. Scenario 5, Bakr has $5,000 in the bank. Is that zakatable? Yes. Factory property worth 200,000? No. Factory property is not zakatable. Machinery worth 100,000? That's pretty cheap. All that machines for 100,000. Right. Inventory worth 10,000? Yes. So how much zakat? 5,000 is zakatable. Factory property, not zakatable. Machinery, not zakatable. Inventory is zakatable. So 15,000. Right? 2.5% of 15. Scenario 6. Zaid has $15,000 in the bank, $10,000 in his 401k. All right. So with the 401k, the whole issue of 401k is, heads up, is that there are many different opinions about this. The reason we don't find it in the Quran and we don't find it explicitly mentioned in the Sunnah is for a very simple fact that the 401k did not exist at that time, right? So there were no 401ks. That's why you won't find it in Bukhari or Muslim or Baqarah and Al Imran. Now, the reason this is a confusing thing and there are different perspectives on it is because it's a very unique scenario. Because the money, the company has in a way given it to you, so it's yours, but you don't have access to completely spend it. So it's your milk, it's your ownership, but you don't have the opportunity to spend it, people will say, because it's there, stuck. One type of 401k which 100%, it's clearly not zakatable, and there's no opinion of being zakatable, and you're safe to not count that, is if it's unvested. Right? So that the purpose of the unvested one is to keep you as an employee, to chain you, right? To with the company. That if you leave this job, you're going to lose that. So that's like a promise that the employer said that if you spend 10 years, 5 years, whatever the period is, then this money becomes yours. So he hasn't given it to you yet. When and if you reach that date that you have spent that many years of employment and that money becomes yours, then it will become zakatable. That's the unvested part. The vested part is when you are working and from your own salary you are putting it aside for your retirement, and the company may be also matching it. The American Fiqh Academy, their fatwa is the safest fatwa, and obviously it is going to be the hardest fatwa. And I'm not necessarily pushing this because there are multiple respectable opinions. People become very enraged and they get excited and start fighting about this, and I don't want that to happen, right? We said the security guard has never taken it out of his holster, and we hope to keep it that way. So is that, no, how can you say that? Right. So that's why I'm saying there is different opinion. Relax. I didn't say this about any other Muslim. I'm saying about this one. But the perspective of the American Fiqh Academy is that if you are earning money and you take some money and put it aside in another account and say this is from when I retire, or you put it under your mattress, or you put it in some place in you bury it in your backyard, whatever. It's your money. You put it aside. Is that zakatable or not? Absolutely. So this money, it's yours. You have put it aside for when you retire. The fact that you're not using, then people keep on harping on the fact that I can't use it. Yeah, you can. You can take it out. Well, yeah, if I take it out, there's penalties. So if you pay 30% penalty and 20% tax, and maybe 50% of the money is gone, and you only get 50%. If you do that, make that decision, because of some calamity, financial hardship, medical emergency, then it's not zakatable. Say for example, a person has $100,000 in his 401k. He does not pay the penalty. He does not pay the taxes. So the American Fiqh Academy says the entire 100,000 is zakatable. Because what happened is the entire 100,000 was reinvested the next year. And if it becomes 150 next year, the entire 150,000 is reinvested. And whenever people say that, no, if I would take it out to actually spend it, I would have to pay taxes and I would have to pay a penalty. Exactly. Did you? I know. If you do take it out and you do pay the penalty and you do pay, absolutely. According to the American Fiqh Academy, 50,000 is gone. What is zakatable? 50,000. You don't pay the taxes, you don't pay the penalty, and then you take that into calculation, and then you say zakat only on the 50, not on the 100. How does it make sense? Go ahead, if you do pay taxes, pay the penalty, zakat will go down to what's left. But if you don't pay the taxes, you don't pay the penalty, why should the zakat not be on the entire amount? So they have a very strong point. Because what's getting reinvested for the next year? The entire amount. The entire amount is getting reinvested. What you could have paid in taxes is getting reinvested. What you could have paid in penalties for early withdrawal is getting invested. The entire amount is getting invested. But the entire amount should not be zakatable. Because you could have paid. The question is not you could have, the question is did you? And you did not. Then one last objection on this remains is that, my 401k is ballooning to 500,000. MashaAllah, barakah, that's great. But my checking account, saving account, whatever I have, current account, I don't even have 2.5% of that huge amount. Because whatever I'm earning, I'm spending. So how can I be obligated to pay zakat when I don't even have those funds? Because you are now just saying my entire 401k is zakatable. So then you calculate it. Just like for debts that people owe you, you calculate it, and when you receive it, then you pay for the past years. So on every due date, you just make a Google file, Excel file, whatever, and sheet, and then record that on my due date, this is the zakat on my 401k. When it matures and you get it all, then you pay for the previous years. With that backdating tartib that we talked about. Right.
What if you pass away before that?
And if you pass away before that, it will be part of your wasiyah. All right. So anyway, that is the 401k discussion. If Zayd has $15,000 in the bank, 10,000 is 401k, 5,000 contributed by him, and 5,000 company match. So what's the whole thing? The whole thing is zakatable, 10,000. And machinery worth 25 is not zakatable. Inventory worth 2,500 is zakatable. There is a $1,000 fine to withdraw the 401k currently. According to some scholars, they deduct this. According to American Fiqh Academy, you do not deduct it. That's why this was thrown in as a discussion point. How much should he pay if the 401k is vested and if it's unvested? So it's too complicated, too late at night for this, right? Basically, you don't want to put it all together. Let's just examine each one separately. That's a way to do it easily. 15,000 in the bank is zakatable for sure, and the $10,000 in the 401k, if it's unvested, the company match is not zakatable. What he himself contributed is zakatable. And if the entire thing is vested, then the 5,000 that he contributed and the 5,000 company match, the entire thing is zakatable. And the penalty is just there to throw you off if you follow American Fiqh Academy, or you'll take it in consideration if you follow what other people say. Scenario 7. Zayd has $400 in the bank and his wife has $40,000 in gold and silver. How much zakat is he obligated to pay? 0. Right. He is obligated to pay 0. Morally, he can help his wife out, but he cannot really help her that much. All right. Okay, so he only has $400. Sometimes the woman will say that if is the husband not obligated to pay if he has cash? He's not. He should help her out. He'll get thawab, but he's not obligated. What if a woman does not have cash? She only has gold. She will have to sell something, and that sounds like totally horrific and a calamity. Women will not want to sell gold, and that's like the worst thing possible. But if she has gold worth over the nisab, she will every year give 2.5% of it until you hit the nisab. After that, you won't have to. It's 2.5% of X as long as X is over the nisab, right? Scenario 8, Zainab has $10,000 in the bank, and gold that she wears worth 50,000, silver that she does not wear worth 1,000, and diamonds worth 30,000. So what happens is that the 10,000 she has in the bank, is that zakatable? Yeah. And the gold she wears worth 50,000? Yes. Silver that she does not wear worth, is that zakatable? It still is. So whether you wear it or not, that's the point of this example. Diamonds? No, they're stones. Right. So there's no zakat. That's that masala, and that brings us to the end, inshallah. So if there are further questions that are not going to be answered tonight, I can show you this for questions. You can note this down. Whoever has a question, www.masjidds.org/question. Right. So you can send your email there, Akhir da'wana. And then you have the zakat calculator. This is really good. We did a lot of effort in preparing this. So it will be inshallah a sadaqah jariyah for us and a reward for us. And if you will, use it to your benefit. It makes it much easier. I'm not sure how to, you want to come drag it? Okay. So we can go visit this, masjidds.org/zakat calculator. And you just input at the different fields, and it will calculate for you every single hour based on the gold and silver price. It updates the nisab. Anyway, so Jazakullahu Khairun. Please, inshallah, make dua for us, and may Allah Ta'ala accept everyone. We also have the Zakat scholarship for the needy students here. If you choose to do so, it's good to diversify your zakat. Some for needy, some for disaster relief, some for scholars, so that inshallah you will get the thawab of supporting students of knowledge. We make a brief dua, inshallah. Tonight is the 25th night. We already, mashallah, Mufti Minhajuddin did dua. May Allah accept all those duas and may accept all of our personal duas as well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. اللهم اجعل اجتماعنا هذا اجتماعا مرحوما واجعل تفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تدع فينا ولا منا ولا معنا شقيا ولا محروما. Oh Allah, accept this gathering. Oh Allah, accept these brothers and sisters sitting here so late at night. Oh Allah, make it easy for us to learn all the masail of the deen and to implement that, and to, oh Allah, gain your pleasure at the end of, Ya Allah, that's all that we need. Oh Allah, we need your pleasure. Ya Allah, we need you to be pleased with us. Oh Allah, and forgive our sins, Ya Rabbil Alameen. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله.
You was mentioning that as spouse you can't pay, right? So like if you have like in that example, like if your wife has like money